I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Communications, and Brian Kelly is actually on spring break this week, so I am joined today by Kelli Saunders. Kelli, welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks once again for having me, Kelli Saunders, Vice President of Policy and Engagement at SBAM. And let's hope Brian brings us back some pretty great souvenirs, Sarah.
Oh, that sounds good. Yes, I hope he's listening and taking notes. All right, we do have a few things to get into today, but before we start, I want to welcome our new elite member, Data Driven Decisions, that's owned by Ken Rubel. So welcome to Ken and his team. All right, so Kelli, we've talked a little bit in a previous show about some changes on the Michigan Supreme Court. Justice Elizabeth Clement announced that she will be stepping down from the bench prior to the end of her term. So let's talk about the process of what happens next in picking another justice.
Yes, so Justice Clement was appointed by Governor Snyder before his term ended. And so her Justice Clement's term will technically end at the end of 2026. So she will vacate her seat on the bench prior to her term ending. If you recall, there was another vacancy during Governor Whitmer's term, and that was filled by former then serving state legislator Justice Bolden, who now sits on the Supreme Court. Now, the process is that if you're appointed during a specific term, you do have to run to fill the rest of the term. And Justice Bolden had to do that this last election cycle, and she was re-elected. Or I should say from her appointment, was officially elected to the bench. Because Justice Clement's term does end basically with the next large election cycle, whoever is appointed will have to run for that seat. So this will be Governor Whitmer's second appointment to our highest bench here in Michigan. And so a lot of scuttlebutt is, who will she appoint? And so that's a fair assessment. Reminder that the Supreme Court will then be held by Democrats 6-1. Their largest, I'll say, leadership on the Supreme Court in a very long time. And so she will need to pick someone that she feels can do well on the ballot this next time around, and does obviously complement the judges that are seated there today. And so there were some names that were thrown around over the weekend. Mark Totten used to be Governor Whitmer's former legal counsel. And President Biden had appointed him to be the U.S. Attorney in the Western District when he was serving. It's customary when a new president comes in that often those U.S. District Attorneys will resign their position. And so Mark Totten is kind of hanging out there. Will he be appointed to this seat? There's also talks of the governor's current legal counsel, Christina Grossi, also being appointed to this Supreme Court position. And then the next logical place to look really is the Court of Appeals and justices that serve there. Governor Whitmer has appointed many people to the Court of Appeals, and so there's other names like Christina Robinson Garrett, Allie Greenleaf, Maldonado, and Noah Hood. And so the question will be, out of all those, who will she choose? It was interesting that Mark Totten was asked this specifically because he's also being considered as a potential Attorney General candidate in 2026. And so when he was asked the question about the Supreme Court, he said, no comment. So ding, let's maybe look to that. But he's got some pretty big decisions to make, Mark Totten himself, in these spaces dependent on who the governor appoints to the Supreme Court. A very viable candidate. He's actually run for Attorney General before. So it's all very interesting to see what the governor will do. Very important on who is appointed to court seats, no matter where they are. And so we will be watching what happens. Justice Clement said that she would vacate her seat on the bench by April 30th. So that's very, very soon. So we'll be watching this story as it develops to see who the governor will appoint to the bench. And she won't wait long. There isn't often a lot of overlap between Supreme Court seats being filled. So my guess is that they're going through a lot of vetting right now on who they want to appoint to that seat. So stay tuned.
All right, well, thanks for the update there, and we'll definitely keep everybody posted. All right, let's turn to an election watch 2026. Kelly, I know when I was out a couple of weeks ago, you and Brian did kind of a little bit of a deep dive into the US Senate race, but there was a pretty big announcement made last week. Fill us in.
Yes, Brian and I were a little befuddled because so many people have been jumping into the governor's race that we were wondering who was going to be the first to jump into this U.S. Senate seat. As a reminder, Senator Peters has decided to not run for office again to fill that U.S. Senate seat. He wants to spend more time with his family. And so that leaves another U.S. Senate seat. Very, very strange, one after another. As you recall, Alyssa Slotkin was just elected to the U.S. Senate after Debbie Stabenow retired. And so State Senator Mallory McMorrow anticipated that she would jump into the race as the first official candidate to jump into this U.S. Senate seat race. She is from Royal Oak, so over in Oakland County, Southeast Michigan. She announced on Wednesday and had already raised $1 million by Thursday. That is very impressive. She has a little bit of a national profile. She had an issue and elevated that, had been able to raise a lot of money internally and externally out of Michigan. And so it's interesting to see her jump in first, but not unexpected. Now, in the same token, there were a lot of financial disclosures happening last week. There's a couple other names, excuse me, that are looking to get into this race. One is U.S. Representative Haley Stevens. She's from Birmingham. She had raised $1.1 million for that first quarter. And then also U.S. Representative Kristen McDonald-Rivet from Bay City had raised over $750,000. Why is this all interesting? First of all, Haley Stevens is anticipated to get into this race. They both occupy that Southeast Michigan region. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how people react in Southeast Michigan to these candidates where, while that is a major central of our population, they occupy the same ground. And so to see them kind of battle it out on who kind of goes where in Southeast Michigan will be interesting. Reminder that Congresswoman Kristen McDonald-Rivet was in the state Senate, and that Senate seat is still open, has not been filled. And so the fact that she was just elected to Congress has essentially formed an exploratory committee to run for U.S. Senate is a very fast rise. But when you talk about a centralized grouping of people running in Southeast Michigan, what do candidates outside of that region, how do they do statewide? Because remember, U.S. Senate is obviously the whole population of Michigan. And so it is starting to set up some interesting dynamics within this race, at least within the Democrat Party, about where will people line up. There is still some talk about the current Attorney General, Dana Nessel, getting involved in this race. She's from Detroit. So again, Wayne County, major population, obviously our largest city, where will this all fall? So it's getting kind of spicy fast, which is interesting, kind of catching up with the governor's race, if you will. But where are the Republicans on this front when it comes to candidates? There's still a lot of talk, obviously, about people running for this seat. Former gubernatorial candidate Tudor Dixon, current Congressman John James, Mike Rogers, who ran against Alyssa Slotkin, also served in Congress before running. They've not made any decisions. If I had to guess right now, if I'm being like Brian, who likes to kind of read the tea leaves, I would say that the Republican Party is probably going to figure out who they want to run for governor and who they want to run for Senate and coalesce a little bit around those candidates rather than having full primaries. There will inevitably be more than one person in each primary, and that's very healthy for these parties. But I would say that there might be a little bit more coordination on that front, just based on maybe President Trump getting involved and asking them to do so in a more correlated manner. So that is the talk of the town on our U.S. Senate race. First candidate in, I would expect many more to come.
And it definitely lets us continue our series of Election Watch 2026. So thanks, Kelly, for that update. Another big announcement came last week, this one out of the Department of Education here in Michigan. Tell us more.
Yeah, it seemed like it was the week of announcements. So you and Brian talking on Monday, and then everybody had something to say. So Dr. Rice currently serves as the superintendent of the Michigan Department of Education. And on Friday, he announced that he will be retiring on October 3rd. A little bit of background on how the superintendent of the Department of Education is chosen. It's actually quite unusual. Most departments are chosen by the governor. She or he picks their department heads. Department of Education is different. It's actually governed by a body of representatives that are elected throughout various election cycles. You'll notice that the State Board of Education is often on your ballot. And so there are 8 people that serve on that board, and they are the ones that go through applications and choose who the superintendent of the Department of Education is. And so with Dr. Rice retiring, they will begin to accept applications for this post. And that body will choose who leads the Department of Education. We do have an education policy here at SBAM. We would encourage you to check that out. But we do believe that the governor should be able to appoint the superintendent of the Department of Education. Now, that takes a constitutional change. And so there are talks about, do we want to go down that road as a state to make that happen? Yet to be seen on that front. But just wanted to provide some context on why that might be different than the rest of the departments. So Dr. Rice, his ascension to the superintendent of the Department of Education, he was actually a French teacher and formerly led Kalamazoo Public Schools and was appointed by the board in 2019. He wrote that he is stepping aside because he has family that he wants to tend to and spend more time with, much to what we just talked about with some other people that serve in office. It's really unclear when the State Board of Education will start accepting applications and reviewing them. There is a little bit of lead time here because remember, he's not retiring until October 3rd. So really you would hope and think that they would get to work early so that there's a smooth transition from him retiring and maybe hiring someone else to take that job. So the state board will have to pick that replacement. It does intensify this debate because Michigan has been falling behind in education standards across the country. A reminder in some of our recent scoring, 4th graders, that Michigan is ranked 44th out of 50 amongst states in how our 4th graders are reading. And so, not to say that Dr. Rice is stepping aside because there is some intense pressure on the educational system, but this person coming in is going to have their work cut out for them in order to get Michigan to a place where we're rising at least to the middle of the pack to make sure that our students are learning, reading in the basic core subjects in order to move forward and put Michigan in a good place so our kids are learning. So the current makeup of the state education board is dominated by Democrats. And so that's another thing too. People who serve on the State Board of Education run in political parties, Republicans and Democrats. And so it'll be really interesting to kind of see how this dialogue unfolds between, does the governor have a say? She certainly can weigh in and say who she prefers. The application process will be open. They'll announce who they are looking at as finalists go forward because it is a public post, but it's been a while. 2019 is a long time ago and how this process went down. And obviously parents, teachers will have a voice in how they feel or who they feel should lead this department. Another point to make on the Department of Education, you'll recall that Governor Whitmer created My Leap. And that there was a little controversy there because a lot of programs were taken out of the Department of Education and put in this new department specifically focused on early childhood education, reconnect, a lot of different, I'll say, preparatory type programs in order to get people ready to enter the workforce or our kids in a better place to be able to enter elementary school ready to learn. And so the Department of Education here in Michigan has been skinnied down quite a bit. And so we'll have to see how this all plays out what this new superintendent post might look like in a new MyLeap department world and how they work together. So we'll be watching this too. I'm very interested. Everyone cares about education in Michigan. We want to make sure that we have a really healthy department so that our students are learning at their best possible capacity in order to lead productive lives. So that is a story out of the Department of Education this week.
All right, we're going to move to a new department, the Department of Treasury, because it is tax season. We are just over a week away from filing deadlines, and the Department of Treasury shared some tips and tricks. So Kelly, I think you're going to go over that for us.
There's a lot of department news this past week because we're going to do one after this yet too. But yes, reminder, if you've not done your taxes, you need to get your taxes done. Make sure that you pay your taxes. But there's a lot of cybersecurity issues out there. We talk about this in our own organization, but we've talked about it on this program before. These cyber scammers are getting smarter every day. And so whether you receive messages via text, via call, via email, want to make sure that you're being vigilant about protecting your information. So if you're receiving something that you have never heard of that person before, or they're asking you to click on a link, make sure that you are connected to Wi-Fi that is secure. Make sure that all personal information is protected password-wise, something that's personal to you. Make sure you're not sharing those passwords. Make sure you're not clicking on links that are sent by people that you've never heard of before. And Treasury does have a link that you can report suspicious activity to so that they can follow up on it. So make sure that if there is something that seems really sketchy, that you're going to the Department of Treasury reporting that. They have an investigative division. The Attorney General's office looks into it as well. We want to make sure that we are rooting these scammers out and that you're not falling victim, or anyone in your company is falling victim to this type of activity, and it really ramps up this time of the year. So please visit the Department of Treasury if you've seen something. Make sure you say something, pass it on, and we just want to highlight this as tax season does wind down. And again, don't forget to file your taxes.
Definitely don't forget to file your taxes. But a little note that you can request additional time to file your state tax returns and pay state tax bills with those penalties and interest waived if you are an individual or business in Alcona, Alpena, Antrim, Charlevoix, Sheboygan, Crawford, Emmett, Mackinac, Montmorency, Oscoda, Otsego, or Presque Isle counties. So because of the state of emergency up there. So if you are in one of those areas and need extra time, you can, we'll drop the link in here to share on the chat, but you can request additional time to file without any penalties. So if that's you, you can take advantage of that too. All right, so Kelly, you did mention we have another department to talk about. This one is related to broadband. We've been very active here at SBAM. We formed a broadband task force a while ago when the federal government was going to allocate funds to states. So give us an update on what's happening here.
Yeah, we firmly believe that access to broadband across all communities is essential in this digital economy. There's no way to stay connected, to advance, if you don't have access to broadband. And so our task force report really did feed into the Michigan High-Speed Internet Office plan for 5 to 10 years. There was a large amount of money that was allocated from the federal government to states. Michigan was in the top, I believe, five to 8 states that received the most allocation. Our topography is so different here in Michigan, from our very urban core to our very rural, specifically in the Upper Peninsula, that we were able to access funds in order to kind of, help this divide get closer to being nothing. And so the Michigan High-Speed Internet Office announced that they are allotting $10.6 million to 13 organizations across Michigan to continue this work. These are going to serve as regional hubs for digital skills training, device distribution programs, online accessibility, and access to affordable broadband service. And so we thought that we would highlight the different organizations that were awarded these funds. If you live in these respective prosperity regions throughout Michigan, you do not have access to broadband or consistent broadband. Maybe you don't have access to a computer. Maybe you don't have access to understanding different ways to use digital access tools. These are the organizations that you are able to reach out to in order to receive service. And so we certainly want to encourage that. In Region 1, it's the Eastern Upper Peninsula Intermediate School District. In Region 2, Grow-Benzie. Region 3, Northeast Michigan Consortium. Region 4A is the Mid-Michigan Community Action Agency. Region 4B is West Michigan Works. Region 5, Central Michigan University. Region 6, Regents of the University of Michigan Flint. Region 7, Ingham County. Region 8, Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. Region 9, the Southeast Michigan Community Alliance. Region 10, Tehara. In Detroit, the United Way of Southeastern Michigan. And in Grand Rapids, the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan. So please make sure that if you have trouble in the digital space that you are connecting with those organizations, they can be found on the Michigan High Speed Internet website if you want more information. There is a recognition from the MyHigh office, though, that there are still gaps and there will be more awards made to organizations throughout Michigan because they know that these 13 respective organizations cannot handle everything on their own. And so if you are not close to those regions or you're having issues, please do contact the Michigan High Speed Internet office and they will help connect you to the appropriate people. We really are encouraged to see the continual evolution of making sure that this plan goes into place to make sure people are trained and they have access. And the MyHigh office has been very diligent to make sure that they are reaching out to as many people as possible, updating the map where it says people might have service, but they actually don't, and getting to the root of that. And so we continue to work closely with them, to engage with them in making sure that this program is being moved along. But please make sure that you are taking advantage of their services as they continue to build. This is a 5 to 10 year project where this money is going to be rolled out.
All right. So Kelly, in just 2 weeks, we are going to be at an amazing event, Michigan Celebrates Small Business. We have talked about it on this show, but it's kind of the last week to get people really signed up for these amazing events. So can you just do a quick overview for our viewers?
Sure can. If you're listening today and you're a small business owner or you have people in your small business network that are owners, they need to be at this event on April 21st and 22nd. We have some amazing partners that we've been working with for months and months and months to pull this off. Michigan Black Business Alliance, the West Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Connexus Group, the Edward Lowe Foundation, Michigan Rehabilitation Services. I'm going to forget someone, the Small Business Development Center, the National Veteran Business Development Council, so many amazing partners to make sure that small business owners can come together on that first day. We're going to be at the Lansing Center. We are going to have an opening luncheon with peers talking about what's the current state of small business and what are people feeling across all regions in Michigan, sharing their stories. We're obviously going to enjoy lunch together. There's going to be legislators there in order to hear that feedback so that they can take it with them and hopefully put together good policy at the Capitol. We're going to move into the afternoon in an expo hall that will have exhibitors, some of our big business supporters, some of our peers in the small business community in order to make connections for people resource-wise to work together. We're also going to have prizes throughout that afternoon. Really excited about that. We are going to have amazing breakout sessions. And Sarah, you've been working hard with the team, but it covers anything and everything small business owners might need to know. Do you want to just mention a few of those?
Sure. We have, and I don't have the list right in front of me, so I'm going to go off my memory here, but we have topics on fraud mitigation, artificial intelligence, how to market yourself and your personal brand, We're doing an Ask the Experts live. That's like HR focused questions. The whole list, there's 15 sessions, is on michigancelebrates.org. But yeah, there really is going to be something for everybody throughout that throughout the afternoon, and we really encourage you to register to come and join us on the 21st and 22nd.
Yes, we're going to end that day with a VIP reception, networking, food, drink, and just having a great time hearing about the Michigan Celebrates initiative, but then also learning more about each other. And then that second day, we're going to go to the Capitol in the morning, visit the floor of the Michigan House of Representatives, have some programming about getting involved in advocacy, why it matters to your business, and then we will have our black tie affair at the Breslin Center that evening where we will celebrate our awardees, alumni come back to celebrate, and then all of our friends in the small business community. If this is something that you're interested in, that it really is the premier small business event of the year. And we can't do it without all of our friends there. So we would really encourage you to register today. We need everybody in the system by the end of the week so we can make sure there's plenty of food, plenty of fun, and we would just invite you to join us. And so if you have any questions, call SBAM. We'll get you taken care of, but we hope to see you in 2 short weeks.
All right, that is our show for today. Kelli, thanks for joining me. We hope you all have a wonderful week, and we will be back here next Monday at 3 p.m.
Everybody have a great week.